Hi, and welcome to another episode of Casual Learning. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite races, the high school cross country race. The cross country race in high school is typically a 5K event, which is 3.1 miles. It's held outdoors at a course. It's held in the fall. The temperatures can vary. Depends on, is the race in August or September, or is it in October or November? It can actually be either hot and humid or actually quite cold. Maybe there's even snow. It's a fun race because it's sort of like a camping or cookout type atmosphere where all the teams, they put up their tents at different areas and outside wherever it happens to be held. And there might be food vendors there if it's a big race. And it's a very enjoyable race. It's an outdoor type event. One of the things with cross country is it's not a great race to watch, generally speaking, because what you'll see the beginning of the race, and it might be this gigantic line of people, high schoolers, who take off in mass as a big group, and you see them run away in the distance, and then you really don't see them again until the end of the race, where you go shuffle off to the finish line, and you wait for them to start coming in, and they come in at different times. So it's usually a difficult race to watch, at least the whole thing. So sometimes they may go off into the woods, and you don't see them until they come out of the woods. That happens. Some courses give you better visibility of the race than other courses. The thing with the courses are they could be over virtually any terrain whatsoever. The only requirement is that it's outdoors. These courses are often in public parks. They're often on golf courses. Sometimes they can be more urban, running down streets, behind schools. And whatever course you run, you have no control over where the course goes, because whoever designed the course is the one who decides where you have to run. And some course designers like nice flat pancake courses, not a lot of hills, not a lot of obstacles. Some course designers want to throw everything that they can possibly think of at you and make you run through it, whether that's hills or streams or bramble or woods or sand, high grass, you name it, whatever they can dredge up in their masochistic minds, that they'll try to stick in this course. Now, in all fairness, the best courses are really the ones that are mostly flat, maybe a hill or two, but because where are you training? You can't train for having to run through a mud pit, right? So it's not really fair to stick that sort of obstacle in a course when nobody trains for that. But these course designers, they'll do it anyway. They don't care. Now, a cross-country course should be 5K. It should be 3.1 miles. If you took a surveyor's measuring wheel, you should be able to go from the start and wheel your way through it to the finish line and come up with 3.1 miles. However, especially in high school, that's usually not the case. Courses can be certified that they have a certain distance, but most high school courses have not been certified. So in high school courses, they can be less than 3.1. They can be more than 3.1. But the coaches will all tell you, oh, this is a 3.1 mile course, because they know that's what it's supposed to be. But the truth is, it's not. Okay? It could be, 0.2 of a mile short or even 0.2 of a mile long. Sometimes even more than that. So, when it comes to high school cross-country courses and the time you get through it, you got to be careful because you can't be sure that this is really a 3.1 mile course. If you're really interested in knowing what the exact distance of a course is, you can always try measuring it through something like Google Maps. You can get an overhead satellite view of the area where the course is. And Google Maps has a function on it that allows you to measure distances from point to point to point to point to point. And you can use that distance calculation on Google Maps to figure out basically exactly how long this course is. Now, it may be that some of the course is hidden because of trees or maybe other obstacles, and you might not be able to get an accurate measurement of the course. But if you really wanted to, that's one way you can do it. You find out exactly how far it is. You could try relying on a GPS watch to tell you, but GPS watches aren't completely accurate, especially in a cross-country course when it comes to distance. So I would stick with Google Maps, really. So a great thing about cross-country is it's run at a slower pace. So it's not for sprinters. You don't have to be a sprinter to be a great cross-country runner. So it's an endurance event. Basically anybody can run cross-country. To be really, really good at it, of course, you have to be great at endurance with some natural talent. But it's an extremely different sort of race than sprinting. All right. Now, what happens at a cross-country race? All right. The competitors get their bib, or maybe they get a shoe tag if there's a fat time involved, and there usually is. Usually, but some of the high school meets, there isn't a fat time. There's some guy holding the watch who's telling everybody what the times are. See a watch, All right. That's a more informal way of giving somebody's time, and it's full of errors. I mean, it depends on the person who's got the watch in their hand whether the time is right or not. So the sort of times that show up on Mile Split, for instance, those are going to be fully automated times, fat times, and those are electronic times, and they're extremely accurate, to the hundredths of a second, and they're often based on chips, microchips put in a bib that you wear, or maybe there's a microchip on a tag that gets put on your shoe, your spike, for instance. But they may also use numbers. That's possible. It's another way to get a fat time. So in a cross-country race, depending on how many people are running in it, everybody gets to the starting line to get ready for the race. And then some official usually goes out some distance so everybody can see him on the course, and he, boom, fires a gun, and everybody takes off. Now, when you're standing on the line, and if you have the right to choose where you want to stand on the starting line, there is sometimes a strategy involved in where you want to stand. Okay, let's say this is the starting line, right? Now, let's say the course goes off in that direction. All right. So you're going to run down here, and you're going to run over here. All right. So where do you want to stand? Well, you want to, in a cross-country race, you generally want to run from cone to cone to cone to cone directly. So you run to you see the next cone, you run towards that cone directly. And then when you get to that cone, you look for the next cone. And then you run directly to that cone. Why? Because you want to run the shortest distance that you possibly can. Because that'll give you the fastest time. All right? Well, obviously, if there's some obstruction, you're going to have to go around it. But that's generally what you want to do. So if you're on the starting line, you want to go the shortest distance possible. So when you look down here and you say, okay, I got to eventually make this turn here. So this is actually, this is your goal. So the question is the distance, where's the shortest distance? Is it this distance? Is it this distance? Right? Or is it this distance? Yeah. A, B, C. Which is the shortest distance? Well, it looks to me like it's C. So if you have a choice of where you're going to start in line, you want to be here. Shortest distance. So you make a beeline for this point here. This poor person over here, they may not even realize that at the start of the race, to get to this point, they may end up running, 50 feet more than you. Well, that's a big advantage for you in terms of time, because they have to run farther. Now, you can figure this out in advance sometimes. If you can get a satellite view of the course on Google Maps, and you can figure out where the starting line is and where the first turn is, you can actually measure the distances on the starting line to that point, and look at what Google tells you the distance is, and you can figure out which is the shortest distance. So you can figure out where it is you want to stand on the line. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice where you stand on the line, because they've created boxes on the line. All right, and these boxes have been assigned to each of the schools that's running in the event, and how they've been assigned usually is random, but you may be stuck with whatever box it is your school gets. And if that's the case, well, there's not much you can do about that, except if you got your whole team here, right? Try to be the one on the line in front, not the one behind. Because then you have to, at the start of the race, you got to get in front of the people in your own team. And that's already an obstacle. All right. So what do you do when you're on the line at the start of a cross-country race? Well, hopefully you've already run your warm-up, 1.5, 2 miles, no more than an hour before the race starts. And what you want to do is you want to keep your heart rate up right before the race starts. And the reason for that is because if you got your heart rate up and the blood is pumping through your body fast, you got a lot of oxygen going to those muscles, you're going to be able to take off faster than somebody who's at a standstill and has just been standing around for 15 minutes, hasn't been doing anything. So you're going to have an advantage. So at the line, you want to run striders, for instance. So if you're on the line here, you may run out here, do a strider back. Okay. But the whole point of that is keep your heart rate elevated. You might stand at the line and jump up and down. Okay. That's another way to keep your heart rate up. Or you may do both of those things. Striders, keep jumping up and down right before the gun goes off, keeps the heart rate up. It's going to give you advantage. So, and when the race starts, there's something called the lactic energy system, which is basically the nervous energy you have at the start of the race. It's a fight or flight energy. It's adrenaline based, and it lasts for about 8 seconds. You get a shot of adrenaline for about 8 seconds when it starts, but that'll allow you to move faster. So you basically sprint for 8 seconds, because if you don't use that energy, you lose it. So you might as well take advantage of it. So you're at the start of the race. Now, what do you do when the race starts? What do you do? That's a complicated question, because it depends on what race you're in, who's in the race, and how fast are you, and what are your goals for that race. So it takes a lot of pre-planning to figure out what you want to do at the start of a race. All right? Milesplit.com is the best resource in terms of figuring out how fast the other competitors in the race are going to be. When you go into a race, you don't want to go into a race blind. You want to know who it is that you're going up against in the race. And you can do that with MileSplit, because it'll tell you, well, at this particular race, these teams are attending. You could do a virtual meet on MileSplit, and it'll tell you who are running and what their PRs are. So you can figure out who's going to be in this race, probably going to be in that race. Because you never know. Someone may not show up. They may be sick. Who knows? But there's a good chance these people are going to show up. And, get familiar with these people's faces. Know who they are so that you can recognize them by sight. And, there's always photos of runners that are available online for you to find out what these people look like. So you should develop a list of who the main competitors in any given race are and what their times are, so that you know what it is that they can do. And their most recent times are usually the most relevant, because that's what they most recently ran. So, they may have run some really fast time last year at States, but that doesn't mean that that's what they're going to run this week. The best predictor of what they're going to run this week is what they ran last week or 2 weeks ago. All right. So you got to know who your competitors are, and you also got to know, well, how fast are you? What is your goal? Maybe you're going to run faster in this race. All right. So if you're looking for certain competitors, maybe people you want to chase during a race, look for them on the line. Where are they? So that you know what direction maybe you want to go off the line, because maybe you want to go towards them, right? If your plan is to chase them, if they're all the way over there on the line and you're on the line over here, you can think, okay, I should start off going in this direction because I'm going to go towards them. Generally speaking, your best times or your PRs come from races where you are chasing somebody who is slightly faster than you. And you chase them to the finish line. Maybe you beat them. Maybe you don't. But that's where your fastest runs usually come from. So chasing somebody, having a plan of, well, I'm going to chase this person in this race, is often a very good strategy. Now, sometimes that person doesn't live up to their reputation. All right, and they're going slower than they should. And then, now you got to find somebody else to chase. So, you might have 3, 4 people you're thinking of chasing, in case some of them don't show up or some of them don't run like they normally should. You chase the other one, right? So that can happen. Now, so you're at the start of the race, and what do you do? Well, a cross-country race is like a snake. It's a snake. It's got a head, all right, and it's got a long body. Okay, you know this snake, all right, and this snake is cut up into segments like this. And when everybody starts running in this cross-country race, it starts out as a giant mass of people, but then it quickly turns into a very long line of people running, and that's the snake. All right. Now, where you want to be in that cross-country race depends on your time, because whoever's running in these different segments, they're all going to run about the same pace and the same time. So you can predict pretty well what the finishing time is going to be depending on where you're running in this snake. So if you're running in the back, you're going to have the slowest finishing time of the race. And if you're running up here, you're going to have the fastest. And you can make a really good prediction as to what are going to be the fastest times and what are going to be the slowest times based on the history of the race from previous years, which you can get from MileSplit. You can see the listing of the previous year's finishes, and you can see where you can see the snake in action, the different times and how they went from faster to slower. You can make a lot of predictions about a race based on what happened last year because it's always roughly the same. Not exactly the same, but always roughly the same. So the question you got to ask yourself is, well, how fast am I? Or how fast do I want to be? And where in this line should I be running? Okay. Well, if it's a really fast race, some championship race, and you're not going to win it. You know that. You don't want to be up here. But let's say, look at last year's results and you figure out, okay, my time would probably fall in the middle. So, you're going to want to run probably here. And if your goal is, well, I can run this race faster, then maybe you want to run up here. All right. If this is a race that you think, you can win this race, or maybe you can finish in the top 10 or top 20. That's a good point. In these high school races, you often get medals, and you should always know, well, how many people get medals? Is it top 6, is it top 10, top 20, is it top 40? And so when you're running, hey, if I want a medal, at least I got to be in the top 20. So keep that in mind, because lots of people, they just run past the finish line, don't realize they're in 21st place and they're not getting a medal. Don't even realize it. The person in front of them realizes it. That's why they're making sure they stay just in front of that other person. But the person behind is like clueless. Oh, I don't know. Oh, guess what? You're 21st. You can get a medal. Because you didn't keep that in mind while you were running. You need to do that. Okay, let's say you think you can win it. Well, you better run up here. Okay. Now, so at the start of the race, you're really thinking about your position in the line. The position. Where do you want to position yourself? If you don't position yourself properly in a race, you've got huge problems. If you position yourself too close to the front, you're not fast enough for it. Then you go off at too fast a pace. You end up, dying in the race, and you end up really slow at the end, and you end up with a really bad time because you went out too fast. If you position yourself too far to the back, where the slower people are than you, all right, then you got a log jam of people in front of you that you can't get past. They will slow you down, and you'll run much slower than you could have. So the key is figuring out where you want to position yourself in the race at the start of the race. So, well, actually, before the race, you should have figured this out. Where should I be in the race? And so the start of the race is all about positioning yourself appropriately in that group of runners. Now, if you're in a race basically where your time is kind of back here, all right, I'm not even sure why you're even in that race, really. Because let me tell you, these races, especially the more people are in it, it can be like, a herd of cattle. And if you're behind that herd of cattle, or you're in that herd of cattle, you're stuck. You're just stuck. You're not going to get out of that. You know how many people you'd have to pass to get out of that herd of cattle? And then the herd of cattle, they're blocking you left and right, and you're trying to get around them and trying to get further up, and that's just going to slow you down immensely and put the brakes on your race, and you are not going to race a great time if you are in a herd of cattle. Okay? So, if the goal is, hey, I want to win this, or I want a really good time, finishing time, you want to run up here. This part is past the herd of cattle. The herd of cattle is like right here. That's where the herd is. If you're in that herd, you're done. And if you're behind the herd, you have no chance. Nothing. Don't be in the herd. If you're in too fast a race and you're in the herd, well, that's the way it goes. But if you want a fast time or win, don't be in the herd. Don't. You're in the herd, you're finished. You will never get past this herd. There's too many people to pass. They will block you. It will take you too long to do it. You will use too much energy, and you will never get up here. So, the start of the race, don't get in the herd. The start of the race is immensely important because it practically determines the end of the race, where you end up. If you don't position yourself properly at the start of the race, then the race is over effectively for you. Because you can't get past the herd of cattle. Now, this is assuming it's a big race and there's a lot of runners. And there's always exceptions to everything, okay? But I'm not going to go over an exceptional case. But basically, the start of the race is all about positioning. And you need to position yourself. And the positioning in the race happens fairly quickly. Maybe in the first 10, 20 seconds, that line has started. And the positioning is pretty much done at that point. Done. So if you haven't done it, if you haven't gotten to the proper position in the first 10, 15, 20 seconds, it's over. You can't get in position now, or it's going to be extremely hard for you to get into the position you want to be in. So at the start of the race, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about, okay, where do I want to be in this line? All right. So you're thinking, if it's a competitive race and you want to run fast, maybe you want to win, you're thinking, okay, I want to be up with the leaders. This is where I want to be. So how do you get there? Well, a great way to do that is figure out, well, who's the fastest runner in this race? Who's the handful of fastest runners in this race? If it's you, let's say you're the fastest runner in the race, then you got to make sure at the start of the race that you're in front, right? But that's easy to do because you got to run really, really fast and make sure you're in front of everybody. Couldn't get any easier than that. You know whether somebody's in front of you or not. If there's somebody in front of you, keep going until you're in front. Unless, of course, that person in front of you is running far too fast for what they're capable of running. You do get people who start off far too fast than what they're capable of. That's why you need to know who the fastest runners are in the race. Because if you see a person up there and they're running really fast, and you would recognize who the fastest runners are, and you don't recognize that person, that's probably what I would call a kamikaze. That's a person who's committing, race suicide at the beginning of the race by going out too fast. Well, you don't want to join the kamikaze, in their slow death. So you can let that one go because they're eventually going to slow down, and I'm going to pass them, so I'm not worried about the kamikaze. But you should worry about the people who are fast, who are, the prime contenders in this race. So what do? So, before the race starts, you look on the line. Where are these people? And you take off in the direction where they are. Because you figure, okay, every race at the start, it begins to form a point or a spear, all right, a spear point. Somewhere during that race, this is going to happen. There's a spear point that's going to form. That's the head, all right? So you want to go in the direction of wherever that spear point is going to be. That's how you get in to this spear point, or at least right behind it. It's a good place to be right there. So while you're running, you're thinking, oh, there's a really fast runner over there. Spear point's probably going to go over there. I'm going to go in that direction. But if you're wrong and you see the spear point is actually going somewhere else, well, change direction and start going towards that. So you eventually want to be behind the group, the lead group that's forming this spearhead. Okay? That way you avoid getting entangled in the herd and you're up there with the leaders. That's the only place you're going to win a race or do well. If you're not up behind the leaders at the start of the race, 10, 15, 20 seconds into the race, you're not winning it. You're not doing well. You're back here. You're done. You might as well not even run the race. Okay. So you start the race, you find the leaders, you go for it, you go in that direction. You got to run, get off to a fast start. You might even have to sprint. First 8 seconds you can sprint anyway because of lactic energy, but you may have to sprint to get behind those leaders. But it's so important that you do it. All right, even if it's faster than the pace you wanted, you got to do it. You got to get in front of those leaders because if you get blocked by a bunch of cattle, your race is done. So you got to get behind. Fast start is very important. It's crucial. You don't get off to a fast start, the game is over at the beginning. All right? So you get behind those leaders. Now, what happens next? Well, hopefully you have scoped out this course in advance and you know where you're going. Cross-country courses can be mazes, absolute mazes. You can get lost so easily, depending on the race and the course. Especially in these high school courses or, the high school's own course. They're usually terribly marked out. The only one who really knows it is the coach for that school. But since you're a competitor, he has no incentive for you to actually know anything about the course. He'd rather have all his runners know the course and you don't know it. That way his runners do well, you get lost, and they win, right? But cross-country courses usually have maps. So coaches get a map of the course, or maybe you get the map online. Try to get a hold of the map. Ask your coach, can I have the map? Or maybe your coach, is a good coach, and he or she's going to take you out to the course ahead of time so that you can jog it, so that you can get familiar with the course and all the turns, the tricky turns. And if there's turns that are super tricky, maybe the coach or you or somebody marks it out with some landscaping paint, right? A can of, that neon paint, just spraying on the ground, spray an arrow going, so when you hit that point, I have to go between those two trees and not those two trees. Because, trust me, all trees look alike at some point, and if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get lost. And if you get lost, you lose time in your race, and it could be the kiss of death, especially if you're up against another fast runner or a runner who's comparable to you. You lose 10 seconds because you took the wrong turn and it took you time to figure it out and you had to run back. That's enough time for that other runner to get way in front of you, and that's it. So one thing you don't want to get lost during a race. Don't. So hopefully, you're off the line, you got behind the leaders, and you know the course, you know what's coming up, and you know where to turn, because you never know. You might find yourself by yourself, and you need to decide where to turn instead of just following somebody else who knows where they're going. It might just be you, and you got to figure it out. So you got to be ready to know where to turn in case it's just you. That happens. So then what do? Well, look, you use the natural advantages that the course provides to take to take time away from your competitors. So you look for natural advantages on the course, like blind turns. Blind turns are great. The course goes this way and it turns that way. But the people who are running here can't see the person who's over there. Blind turn, right? Those are great. What you do there is you make sure you're in front of the competitor. You make the blind turn, right? And then you take off, basically as fast as you can. So that when so-and-so finally makes that blind turn and sees you, they're like, oh my God, so-and-so is now 50 feet in front of me. Before it was only 10 feet. Oh, I give up. I'm not chasing that person anymore. See? So you get the person behind you to give up chasing you by using a blind turn. And you've slowed them down. And now you can ease your pace back a little bit, but you got them. You broke their will. When it comes to competitors in a cross-country race, one of the techniques is breaking the will of the runner behind you. That means that they stop chasing you because you get too far ahead. And then they just give up. They're like, you know what, I'm not going to chase this person anymore. And that slows them down. And you can slow down after they give up, right? But you've got enough distance now to beat them. So breaking the will is a very important concept. Generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, if they're less than 20 seconds behind you in a race, watch out. They're still within shooting distance. But if they're more than 20 seconds, they're not going to catch you. It's over for them. You'll beat them. Now, there's other obstacles on a cross-country course that you can use to your advantage. Hills. Hills are a great one. The person who can run up a hill fast and then sprint at the top has the advantage over everybody else, just about everybody else. Because once they get at the top of the hill, they don't feel like sprinting. And they probably won't. But if you can do that, sprint out, in your mind maybe you think, I'm going to sprint out the lactic acid that's built up because I went up this hill too fast. If you can do that, that's a point where you can separate yourself even more from your competitors. So whatever obstacles there are, take advantage of them, because that's how you can beat your competitors. So, if the weather is bad that day, it's raining, right? Learn to love to run in the rain, because 99% of them hate it. Now, if you could go out with the right mental attitude that I love the rain and I love running in it, well, guess what? You're going to run faster than everybody else who's like, I can't stand the rain. I wish I had an umbrella. I'm not going to run fast today. You can take advantage of them if you have the right attitude. Whatever the obstacle is. Maybe it's the wind. Oh, it's the wind. I can't run in the wind. Oh, it's going to slow me down. Or maybe it's the cold. Oh, it's really cold. My fingers are freezing. Take advantage of those things. Ignore the wind. Ignore the cold. Whatever the obstacle is, that's your advantage. If you learn to love those things, you will do better during the race than your competitors. And you can work it to your advantage. That's how you can win. So use the obstacles the course provides to help beat the people behind you. So, you're running the race, and it's helpful to have coaches or parents or somebody positioned at maybe the 1 mile point in the race, and then maybe the 2 mile point in the race, and then maybe the 3 mile point in the race, if you can do all that. Who's standing there with their watch. Hopefully they synchronize the watch with the actual start of the race, and as you go by, they can press this button and say, "Oh, your time is blah blah blah." So they're telling you, are you keeping pace for your first mile? That can be very helpful information. They can tell you, hey, you're in 18th place. That's useful information because as a runner, you can't see all 17 people in front of you in a cross-country race. Maybe half those people are in the woods somewhere. You don't even know where they are. So you lost count of where you are in the race, but it's really important to know where you are in the race. Maybe you want that medal. Maybe only the top 20 get the medal, right? And you're 18th. Okay, great. Now I know. The third person behind me is the one not getting the medal, and I want to make sure I get a medal. Or, maybe you tell them who it is that's running behind them. Because when you're running, you don't have eyes in the back of your head. You can't see who's behind you. So somebody can tell you, hey, so-and-so is 10 seconds behind you. And that raises an interesting point. It has to do with strategies. There are basically two types of strategies in trying to win a race. There's the sitter and kicker strategy. This is a very, very common strategy. And that's where the person who's trying to win the race just sits back on the person who's in the lead. And they're keeping an eye on them. And what they plan to do is kick at the very end of the race and pass that leader before the finish line and win it. All right. And people who have a really strong finishing kick can really take advantage of this strategy. And in fact, if you have a strong finishing kick, it's the strategy for you, really. So what are you doing as a sitter and a kicker? You're sitting back, you're watching a leader. You're not approaching them too closely because you don't want to push them into running faster, because that's the last thing you want. You want them to go, basically, if they're the leader, as slow a pace as you could possibly lure them into, because you're not using your reserve energy. You're holding back some, but you're a kicker, so you've got this enormous battery of energy that you're going to use to blow past them at the end of the race. So the slower that leader goes, the better for you. You're not using your reserve battery, right? So you hope they do that to practically the last 200 meters. And then you use that battery, you take off, you pass them, you win. That's the sitter and the kicker. Okay? Great strategy. Use them constantly. One of the problems, of course, is, if you're the leader, you want to know whether the kicker is right behind you or not, or how far behind are they from you. Is this person more than 20 seconds behind me? Because if they're 20 seconds, they're probably not going to be able to kick and beat you. But if they're closer than that, that's what they're doing. I call these people, I have my own word for them. I call them stalkers. They're stalkers. So I may say to somebody, hey, you got a stalker behind you, right, as they run by. And what that means is there's somebody right behind them who's just following them, a sitter and a kicker. And they're just waiting to pounce at the end of the race, just waiting to pounce on you. And they'll beat you because they got that kick, they got that energy. It's just important to know that if you're the leader, that there's somebody sitting right, standing right behind you. And that's, so what's the other strategy? The other strategy is, it's to lead the entire race, practically the entire race. Maybe not quite at the beginning, but lead the entire race. And this is a tougher strategy, leading. You really have to be a great runner to be able to do it. And basically, what you're doing is you're running a certain pace. You're running a really fast pace that nobody else can keep up with. They just can't. And you're running this the whole race. And you're trying to put as much distance between you and the person who's behind you during the race. Just trying to create as much distance as possible so that that person can't catch you at the end of the race. They just can't catch you. You're gone. They can't catch you. No more than 20 seconds. You're going to win because even if this sitter and kicker back here, they don't have their battery. They don't have enough time left in the race to catch you and pass you. Race is over. So if you're that sort of runner, and these runners are the ones usually who don't have kick, they don't have any kick at the end of races. Whatever reason, they just don't have it. Not every runner has kick, but you don't have to have kick necessarily to be a great runner. If you're a great endurance runner and you can run really fast the whole 3.1 miles, even if you don't have kick, you can still win a lot of races because you've gotten so far in front that there's no kicker and sitter who's going to be able to catch you before the end of the race. All right, that's another strategy. It depends on what kind of runner you are. If you got a kick, use number 1. If you don't have a kick, use number 2. So you're in the race, you're running it, and you can do about a half mile until the race is over. So this is where you start making a move. Start running faster, at least as fast as you can. Well, not sprinting, but start making your move to the finish line because this is where everybody's going to start moving faster. They're all going for the finish line. The sitter and the kickers, they're starting to go, right? Because they know they got to eventually pass you before the finish line or they don't win, right? So everybody starts moving faster the last half mile. And then in the last 200 meters or 100 meters, you better be sprinting. I mean, sprinting. So the distance runners, how do you sprint? You open up your elbows. Open up your elbows, which means your arms go down some. You're opening up your elbows. Okay? And you're moving your arms fast. So you're sprinting to the finish line. Now you see, the faster your arms move, generally speaking, your legs have to keep up. The faster you have to run. Sprinters know this is common sprinting technique, but sprinters are they're doing this. Whereas I'm talking about distance runners, so you open up your elbows so your arms are lower, but you're still moving your arms fast because you want to go as fast as you can. So you're sprinting the last 200 meters, 100 meters, and when you're sprinting that last distance to the finish line, always assume that there's somebody right behind you because there almost always is somebody right behind you, and their plan is to pass you before you hit the finish line. There's plenty of people that do that. They're like, I'm going to chase this person, and then right when we get to the finish line, that's where I'm going to take off and I'm going to beat them. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen. So when you're sprinting to the finish line, assume you got somebody breathing down your neck, because you probably do. They're probably right there. You can't see them, but they probably are. Good. It's better to assume they are. So you take off. You don't look back. You run through that line. Never run up to the line. Run through it. Pretend the starting line is like, 10 meters in front of the actual finish line. Assume that the finish line is about 10 meters in front of the actual finish line, and go for that imaginary finish line, just so that you run through the finish line. Because you would not believe how many races are lost in the last second, or how many medals are lost in the last second. The top 10 get medals. Number 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11. They're battling all together, and it's a group at the last second. And somebody's got to be number 11, and you could lose the medal by half a second because you didn't pay attention to sprinting in the last 100 meters and getting past that line. Very important to do that. Okay. Well, what do you do before a cross-country race? How do you prepare for it? Well, a couple days before a cross-country race, that's your carb day. So you eat carbs. Pasta, bread. The day before a cross-country race, it should be about half carbs, half protein. All right, so some meat, pasta, potatoes, bread, whatever. Now, the day of the race, you really don't want to run with food on your stomach. Okay, it doesn't feel comfortable. You could get bloated. You just don't want to do it. You want to run on an empty stomach, really. And so you shouldn't eat more than 3 or 4 hours before the race. And if you're going to eat something light, like a couple pieces of toast or some oatmeal. That's it. Now, if you get hunger pains between the time you ate and the beginning of the race, you can take a protein bar with you. Bite off a piece, digest it, see if that kills the hunger pains. If it doesn't, take another bite, all right, until you don't have the hunger pains anymore. So that won't irritate you. Those pains won't irritate you when the race starts. And the night before a race, you want to hydrate. So drink a couple bottles of water, at dinner up to bedtime. Get some water in you. Okay. All right. Cross-country spikes. Well, here's a cross-country spike. Actually, no. I'm sorry. This is an indoor track spike. But I'll just use it for demonstration purposes. If you have a problem with shoes coming untied during a race, get yourself a pair of lace lockers. See that? You can get those online. Lace lockers, they're not that expensive. And what they do is they fit in underneath the laces. And when you're done tying your laces, you can stick them in the lace locker, and it ties the laces down so they can't come untied. It's a great little cheap device for people who have problems with laces untied. Now, if your laces ever come untied during a race, just remember that you can't trip over your own laces. You can't. Can't be done. Don't worry about it. Now, somebody else could step on your lace and make you fall. But you can't trip over your own laces. So don't let that bother you during a race if your shoelace comes untied. Just keep running. Spikes. There's different sizes of spikes. There's these little metal things that can come unscrewed and screwed back into the little eyelets in these at the bottom of the shoe. And there's different sizes. There's like 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch. They can be even bigger than that, 1/2 inch, even bigger, believe it or not. But in a cross-country race, you're generally using a 1/4 inch spike. But if it's muddy or raining, use a 3/8 inch spike because it's going to help. It'll, when it's muddy and raining, people fall during races, and you can have somebody fall right in front of you. What do? Do you stop and help them get up? No! You don't do that. You jump over them and keep going! Or go around them, right? They're going to have to get up and start running again if they can. Usually they can, but that's the other thing. If you fall and you didn't really hurt yourself, get up and keep running. Get running as fast as you can. You lost some time, but you might be able to make it up. If it's muddy or there's puddles, maybe there's rain, you gotta be careful about slipping and falling. So try to avoid mud and water puddles if you can, because they're slippery. But if you can't avoid it, then run through it with confidence, and hopefully nothing happens to you. Um, all right. Um, you know, well, what should you be doing before the race? Well, you should generally, on a hot day, you should generally be staying cool. So stay in the shade before the race. Or stay in a cool environment. Hell, if you could stay in an air-conditioned building before the race, stay there. The cooler you are, the better you're going to run. The best temperatures for times, as far as cross-country races are concerned, are generally below 60 degrees Fahrenheit with as low as humidity as you can get. That's the best conditions for running. Heat and humidity slows you down. You can tell if there's a lot of humidity because there's a lot of clouds in the sky. If there aren't a lot of clouds in the sky, there's not a lot of humidity. This is a good day. The colder it is, generally, the better you're going to run. But that being said, if it's a cold day, you don't want to freeze before the race. Right? You got to keep warm. So wear warm clothes or stay in a building or in a shelter. Maybe your team has a tent of some sort that you can stay in, or maybe even a portable heater in that tent, like a propane heater. That would be great. But stay warm. Wear gloves. That's another thing. A really cold day, if you want to, just get yourself a cheap pair of dollar gloves and wear them at the start of the race. So your hands are, nice and warm. During the race, you have the option of just tossing those gloves off as you run. And you don't have to worry about getting them back when the race is over. They're only $1. Who cares? Let the squirrels build something out of them. Who cares? Or you can keep them on the whole time if you really like them and they're not annoying you. But you can do that. Generally speaking, in terms of uniform, the freer you are to run, the better off you are. So, you generally don't want to wear anything in addition to your bare uniform, whatever that is. But on these really cold days, sometimes it makes sense to wear, undergarments, Under Armour, that sort of thing. Because if you're really uncomfortable due to the cold, you don't want to have to deal with that irritation while you're running or at the line. So it makes more sense to stay warm, just to avoid the irritation, even though, the Under Armour and anything else you might be wearing might slow you down slightly because it's restricting your movement to some extent. But that counterbalances the fact that otherwise you might be freezing and you're really irritated and you're not going to run well because you don't feel well because you're too cold. How do you run up hills? Well, when you're running up a hill, you want to do an arm pump. Okay, first thing is you run up to the hill. So you start accelerating up to that hill. Then you run up the hill, and you do arm pumps. So from hips to pits. So you're doing this, right? And then you're doing high knees up that hill. Then you get to the top of the hill, and let's say you're gonna run down the hill. How do you do that? Well, you want to run down the hill fast too, but you got to do it so that you don't slip and fall, right? So what are you doing? Oh, another thing, when you run up the hill, you're also slightly leaning forward when you're going up that hill. All right, so you're going down the hill. Well, how do you do that? Well, you want to keep your legs wide when you're going down, sort of like bow-legged, but not quite, but wide. You're running down wide, and you're sort of like got your arms out. It's sort of like you're swimming. That's how you go down the hill. Because you want to go up the hill and down the hill as fast as you can, but you got to be careful with hills because it depends on the size of the hill. It could really be a lactic acid trap for you, and you got to be careful with hills. Too big a hill can really knock you out of a race if you go up that hill too fast, and your lactic acid takes off, and then you hit the wall by the time you get to the top of the hill, and the rest of the race is done for you because you went up the hill too fast. So if there's big hills, be careful of big hills. You might be smarter taking a slower pace going up. Of course, down the hill, you always want to go as fast as you can. But you might want to take a slower pace going up a big hill because of that lactic acid trap. When you're passing somebody, how do you pass somebody? Well, best way to pass somebody is to come up right behind them so they don't even know you're there. Because if they know they're there, they're going to start running faster. And that's going to make it more difficult for you to pass them. All right, so you sneak up right behind them. They don't know you're there. And then you go whoop, 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 right in front of them, you take off. And then you break their will to chase you. Because as soon as they figure out that you're there, they're going to start running faster. So you do it real quick, right in front of them, and then you take off. And then they're like, oh, I'm not going to chase this person. I give up. That's how you pass somebody. All right. Cross country, how well you do in cross country season in the fall is mostly determined by your spring training. Did you run in the spring? What do I say? Spring training. Summer training. Did you run in the summer? What did you run? Did you have a good program? Did you have a good coach who devised a good program for you to run in the summer? I hope so. Because if you didn't run in the summer, your cross-country season is over before it even started. And you can't do anything about it. You cannot make up for failing to run in the summer. If you didn't run in the summer and you show up for cross-country in the fall, you're going to be 2-3 minutes slower. And you'll never make it up. Your season's over. So, you didn't run in the summer, don't expect good things to happen to you in fall cross country because they're not going to happen. So, the importance of summer running can't be overstated. It's critical that you show up when cross country season starts in great shape. All right? You've been working on your lactate threshold. You've been running those tempos. You've been running miles, and, VO2 maxes, and maybe you've had some, 5K, fun 5Ks under your belt, so you've run some speed before you show up cross country. You've done all that. You've been running since, 2 weeks after school stopped the previous year. All right. Generally speaking, in track, traditionally athletes get a 2-week break after the season ends. So spring track ends, you get about a 2-week break, and then you start your training for cross country. Those breaks are important. It gives you time to recuperate. You get mentally fresh. There's good reasons for doing it. But then 2 weeks are up. You start. You start again. Get on your program. Put those miles in every week. And I know this might be, 2-3 months before cross-country season starts. That's true. And it's a long haul. But you better do it. You don't do it, you're not going to do well in cross-country. Guaranteed. All right? All right. Another thing in cross-country is the issue of weight. In an endurance race, basically, the less you weigh, you have an advantage because you don't have to carry as much weight over that distance. That means you can, generally speaking, run longer and farther and faster. So, maybe 6 or 8 weeks before the big race, you might want to go on a diet. Lose, 10, 15 pounds by race day. And that'll help. Now, I'm not saying you should be anorexic or anything or, have an eating disorder or something like that. I'm just saying if you can lose 10 or 15 pounds before the big race, that's going to help you. Not more than that. And then when the race is over, you can eat again. Go back to what you normally weighed. But that's a technique you can use that'll help you run faster. In some of these cross-country races, especially high school races, they may expect you to run over concrete or asphalt through a parking lot. And, you have no choice because that's where the course goes. Now, you may be left scratching your head. Who on earth was dumb enough to set up a course that goes through a parking lot with cars coming in and out? I've seen this. It's the other high school's coach or some other coach thought that this was a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's a very, very bad idea. But nevertheless, you may have to run that. And you got to be really careful on asphalt or cement when you're running on it, with spikes, because it can be somewhat slippery. But I've never really. You can run on asphalt and concrete with spikes. You can. It makes a lot of clattering noise, and you may have to run a little bit slower so that you don't, slip and fall. But you can do it. So I wouldn't suggest, generally speaking, that you forego wearing spikes just because a race has some asphalt or concrete, because the spikes are extremely valuable when it comes to running on grass or on dirt or in mud. So don't give up spikes as an advantage. Generally speaking, just don't do it. If you're going to make a lot of noise, you're going to make a lot of noise for a little bit. But then you're going to get back on the grass, and then you're going to have the advantage of the spikes. Spikes can really, really help in terms of your ultimate race time. Don't give them up if you can avoid it. In other words, don't wear flats or regular sneakers when you run a cross-country race. Get yourself a real pair of spikes. I showed these to you. A serious runner has a spike. They have spikes. They wear spikes. If you're not wearing spikes, you're just telegraphing everybody, you're not a serious runner. If you're running in sneakers, you're an amateur. They don't understand. Obviously this person doesn't know what they're doing. They're running in sneakers. Okay. Another technique you might want to use during cross-country races is chase and pass. So you pick the person in front of you and you try to chase after them, and then you try to pass them. And then once you pass them, you look for the next person. And then you go after that person. And you do this the whole race, chasing and passing people. You can even count the number of people that you pass. And say, oh, wow, in this race I passed 10 people. That's pretty good. Now, the people who are really good and want to win or, get a medal or whatever, they're not really chasing and passing because they're up front with the leaders. But the people behind, that's a technique you can use to motivate yourself to keep running fast during the entire race, which is, could be a long race. That's the other thing. Don't try to think too much during the race, okay? You could get boring, I suppose. So don't try to think too much. Just keep going at it, all right? Because you start thinking, and that kind of slows you down because now you're thinking instead of just making that body move, right? When you go into a cross-country race, the previous 2 days before the race should be easy days, easy mile days, maybe 5 easy miles, then 3 easy miles, then the race. Maybe each of those easy days, you also run striders to make sure your body remembers what it means to run fast. But that's about it. 2 or 1 day of easy miles. That's it. You do any more than that, you may end up showing up at the race and you feel tired and lethargic because you haven't done any really, strenuous running in a while. You don't want that to happen. If you go to the gym, you don't want to go to the gym a couple days before the race because you don't want to show up on the race day sore. Because you went to the gym last night or 2 days ago and your arm still hurts, your leg still hurts, or whatever. So you want some time to recover from that sort of gym type activity before you race, because you don't want to feel pain. If you feel pain, another thing is if you feel pain on race day, take some Advil. And before the race, an hour before the race, any pain you have might go away. That'll help you. When you run on grass in a cross-country race, grass slows you down by about 10%. because you got to go through the grass and there's a lot more friction than if you're on a flat surface, and it just slows you down. It's going to slow you down about 10%. Um, that's why some of your training for cross country should be on grass, because you're running on grass during a race. So why not train on grass and get the benefit of that extra resistance in your training? But some of it should be speed workout as well on a track. You can't forget what running fast means, because you need to be able to sprint to the finish line or sprint at the beginning of the race to get into position. So there's still use for running as fast as you can during practices. So some of your days should be speed workouts too, where you're training your body to run as fast as it can. Maybe during a cross-country race you want to pass somebody, and that requires a lot of speed to do that. So you might be using your speed there. There's a saying that if you take one day off from practice, you know it. If you take 2 days off, your coach knows it. And if you take 3 days off, everybody knows it. Okay? You show up after taking 3 days off, not practicing, everybody can see that you're not running well. All right? So remember that. Don't skip practice. Before a cross-country race, you should also get a good night's sleep. Try to get 9 hours of sleep before the race. It's helpful. If you have long hair, you can use a pre-wrap to tie your hair up during the race. Pre-wrap it's this stuff. I'm sure you've seen it. Trainers use it, and you can use this to, if you're a girl, generally speaking, you can use this to wrap your hair up during the race so it doesn't get in your face. And it's disposable, right? And you just take it, and throw it out. Who cares? It's not that expensive. Another thing you should probably do is take a multivitamin every day with iron. Obviously vitamins are helpful for your general health, but for cross-country runners, for girls especially, there can be issues regarding iron deficiencies. A lot of cross-country programs, college programs, will test your iron content. How much iron is in your blood. They'll make you get a blood test, because iron is what carries the oxygen in your red blood cells to your muscles, and oxygen is what fuels aerobic processes that are almost 90% of a cross-country race is an aerobic event, maybe more, maybe 95%. It's all oxygen-based energy that you're using. So how much iron you have is a big deal. The more iron you have in your blood, the more oxygen your blood can carry, the better you're going to run. So a multivitamin with iron at least will, to some extent, address an iron deficiency. At least you're getting iron in a proper recommended daily allowance. That's helpful. Now, you may have some other medical issues that a vitamin's not going to help you. But that's between you and your doctor. But I just want to let you be aware of that issue. Iron deficiencies can be an issue for some runners, and it can cause you to run slower. Just looking through my notes to see if there's anything else I want to tell you about. Getting close to the end. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Well, you want to be the best cross-country runner that you can be, and you have to have a good training program, and you got to run in the summer, and you got to know a lot of these tips, and if you have the talent and the work ethic, you may very well be a very good cross-country runner. And it's a fun sport. Um, if you're really, really good, you're an elite cross-country runner, you may even be able to get recruited by a college coach to run cross-country. So there's also that maybe you can look forward to. Any sort of training program for cross-country usually involves lots of different workouts that are somewhat similar to track workouts, training for track, but slightly different. Cross-country training often it involves running on, fields, running in fields, running on grass. Maybe there's a hills workout, so you don't get a hills workout for track because there's no hills on a track. Why would you do that? But for cross-country, there's such a thing as a hills workout. And the reason is because you can run into hills on a cross-country course. And you want to be practiced at running up and down hills so that it doesn't throw you off during the race and you can handle it. And so you might have a day of practice where it's a hills workout and there's some steep hill and your coach wants you to run up the hill, downhill, up the hill, downhill, and up the hill, and downhill, 6 or 7, 8 times, something like that. Cross-country coaches have all sorts of unique training areas that they like to use. For instance, some might want to make you run on sand or in a sand pit or something like that. I'm not so sure that's a great idea because you don't want to injure your runners. So be careful where you have them practice so you're not injuring them because an injured runner isn't going to be able to run. But these cross-country coaches can get a little, kooky, and they come up with all sorts of ideas of how they can train you in unique and special ways. And, you might question the effectiveness of some of this stuff. But generally speaking, a cross-country program, training program is somewhat similar to track, except that you have hills workouts. You're doing stuff on grass, but it's also repeats and intervals and speed workouts and threshold runs and VO2 maxes and long days and short days. So it's basically the same stuff, okay, with maybe a few unique things put in there by your unique coach. All right. So hopefully you win the race. You get the medal. You get to go on the podium if you're in high school. And, you can say, hey, I won this race. I'm a great runner. If you ever have a doubt about whether you have talent as a runner, if you run an elite time, a gold elite time, or silver elite time according to MileSplit, you got talent as a runner. And if you're working towards those times and and you're getting close, you got talent. And don't let anybody, suggest you don't, because you do. It's a fun thing for people to pursue. It's fun. It's fun for everybody. It's a fun race. I think that's about it for today on cross country. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and maybe I'll give you an answer in a future installment. Please press the subscribe button below if you like what you hear today. I appreciate that. And everybody, take care.